Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Forming the Future podcast series. Today we've got the expert guest and Director of Business Development at Lions and Dave Mills. We've got Emily Herbert, the Marketing Manager of Michelmersh, and Sarah Gresley, the Innovation and Sustainability Director at Michelmersh. And today we're talking about urban mining with recycled and reused construction products, as well as touching on some of the great initiatives that Lions are doing for apprenticeships, talking about minimising carbon emissions and all sorts of different subjects around the construction sector and the challenges that we're currently facing, as well as some of the great things that different companies are working on currently. Dave, I wondered if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, no problem, Sarah. So, Dave Mills, and as you said, the company's Lions and Newt. I've been at Lions and Newt 20 years, and over the past 2 years have been one of the owner directors. So, company's been going since 1972. So we've got a huge longevity in the industry, which is rare. And it's always a struggle to keep it going because as things change. And that was 72 as a partnership, 86 as a limited company, and we've always focused, probably over the last 40 years anyway, 30 odd years, on the central London market, which are obviously projects that logistically are generally quite tough and the demands are the highest. So kind of, yeah, that's basically us.
And Dave, you're a Brick Awards judge and have been now for a good, what is it, 2 years?
2 years. 2 years.
2 years
Yeah.
now. Is this the third year then, or is
No,
this
this is the second year.
the second year?
This is the second year. So so we did that last Friday, and it was exciting. As a contractor, there's contractors, there's architects on the judging panel. And it's amazing, we all see different things, but that's probably the benefit of the Brick Awards over other awards, where actually it's the projects that we look are being looked at from two sides. So and then everyone gets their opinions out, everyone looks at it, and then it's very democratically chosen. But I found it's really refreshing to be a judge on the Brick Awards, because you're getting to see the best of brick in the UK and actually around the world for the Worldwide Award. My only issue is they don't allow us to travel to judge the Worldwide Awards, but because I'd be happily do that for many of the awards. But we get to see different projects around the country. We get to focus potentially on different sections of the awards. And we write down what we've seen and what we believe, and it's also good to meet the people behind the projects. So this year, I met a couple of the brickwork contractors who'd worked on the projects. I met the architects who'd designed the projects, and seeing people's passion for what they're doing and their passion for brick, which I think is obviously vital. I think is great to see, and I think the Brick Awards can only really promote brick. And this thing, it's fantastic to be shortlisted. It's fantastic to be nominated. We have been in the past, obviously shortlisted, nominated, numerous times. I think our first Brick Award for us as a business was 1992, so it was a long time ago. And I think for contractors, you see the projects that you've worked on up in lights as such. Even if it hasn't won, it's up there and people can see it. I think also it shows how strong the British brick manufacturing sector is in terms of the different types of bricks, the different opportunities that are coming out, and actually what can be done, I think, with bricks as well, which is fantastic to see. And I really enjoy the judging part. I really do. I'm very judgmental, that's why.
And without expecting you to give anything away, because we know you wouldn't, have you seen any of the projects coming through using recycled or reused products?
Yeah.
Is that on the increase, do you think?
It was quite exciting this year to see a number of projects where there had been an element of the bricks that were on that project originally were reused. For me personally, that's very exciting. I think the use of bricks that have been used and have huge longevity in terms of how long they last, alongside new bricks, is excellent. It's I mean, probably go into it later in our conversations, but in terms of the beauty of the brick itself and how it hasn't changed, or it has changed. Actually, the weather has changed it. It actually makes it more beautiful as such. Feel really weird calling bricks beautiful, but it allows for old and new to come together. I think that you can't really see with anything else. And yeah, this year there were a number of projects. One in particular in my head that where you saw it, and straight away it sparked my own personal interest. But actually, you notice it when you read through some of the submissions, and they haven't focused on it, and they probably should focus a little bit more on the submission, especially as we look more and more at sustainability, because obviously it's a massive part of that. So yeah, I think we're definitely seeing it more, and hopefully see more and more of it, as I think brick still has its resurgence in popularity, which I think should hopefully increase.
I find that we see it a lot more on the refurbishment and urban regeneration type of projects as well, and that's really exciting to see that it's becoming more common practice. It's a good segue, really, Dave, into talking about circular brick, and it's something I think Lions and Anouk should be very proud of. It's something that we as a business are trying to move towards more circular practices, using more recycled content in our products. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this came about and your own personal passions for reuse of product?
So circular brick is more of an opportunity than a product. We've had a number of projects where they've asked us to reuse the bricks on the project as a section of work or as an element of the work, not as the facade, because generally projects, if they're being changed, are getting bigger. So actually you need more materials. So what we noticed over a number of projects is there were elements that didn't overly work, i.e. the bricks were taken down not very carefully from the building, so there was a huge amount of damage already. Or another one for us is that the people who were taking down the bricks were fine, they did a fantastic job, but actually the people who were then checking the bricks didn't have enough knowledge on the bricks to say what was good, what was bad, what was part of the manufacturing process, what actually had happened over the last 40, 50 years it had been on a building. And we kind of said, well, we kind of know bricks quite well, and there's an opportunity here, especially for the clients that we work for, to allow for the taking down of bricks on the project, to maximise the percentage that can be saved, to clean those bricks, which we have done very successfully, and we've got a few different methods now which work, moving away from the old-fashioned hammer and bolster and chopping all the mortar off, which is probably more necessary if the bricks are going on to be sold. If you're reusing them on the building, you have a little bit of leeway with that, and it's just being able to offer our clients and the main contractors we work for, the developers that we work for, the opportunity to reuse the bricks if they wish. Now, I know you won't like the bricks that are behind me because they're not Michelmershes, but all of these bricks were not used on a site, or were actually ones that had been taken down and there was a design change. So we didn't go buying new bricks to do the new office. We used what we had kind of available. And there's more brickwork in another element of the office, and then some more in another element, and not massive, but they're all ones that would have generally gone to landfill.
Are you finding then, Dave, is there a percentage to which the number of bricks that you can save generally on a project?
It depends on the project. It really does. We've not, and we say this, and funny enough, I've been in an email conversation with somebody this morning on a very big project that's coming up, where they need to take down some of the bricks, and we've not had an opportunity as of yet to go through the full circular brick process. We've done elements of it. We've cleaned the bricks and reused them. We've selected the bricks, etc., etc. But I think we're nearly there in terms of having that full circular process, where I believe we can match the bricks better in terms of if the building needed 100,000 bricks originally and now it's a 500,000 brick, and we can reuse 100,000 bricks. Well, okay, it's going to reduce the new order to 400,000, but actually let's blend it with the right manufacturer. And one thing we've been quite clear with circular brick is that when we go to blend the bricks, we're not blending it with somebody who has a manufacturer who has zero focus on making bricks better in terms of making them more sustainable. It will be with manufacturers that have a visible change. So we can look at blends of bricks and we can say, oh, well, that one is perfect, it's the perfect match. Well, there is another brick that's going to be very similar if that manufacturer isn't doing what they should be doing. No, I do think most manufacturers are, to be honest with you. I mean, I know what you guys are doing, obviously, and I think that's obviously a massive plus. So if you can mix that with the reclaimed, you're only going to have better. The big issue we have with circular brick is that, and the big issue with reclaimed bricks, is the economic element, because not all bricks have a resale value. So in terms of, we don't want to sell bricks. So, we want to reuse the bricks on the project it's coming down for, or as a donor brick to another project by that developer or something like that. We don't want to say, right, we'll take down 100,000 bricks and we're going to sell 100,000 bricks. We have no interest in doing that. We don't want to do that. Could we help facilitate it through one of the reused products brokers? Yes, we could. Could we look at selling it to a reclamation yard? Yes, we could. But the reality is, with a reclamation yard, if we took down 50,000 of a kind of a standard red brick, they're not going to have a market to sell it on. There's nobody going to buy it. So the cost of those bricks. So the reality for reusing is kind of the developers turning around and saying, let's keep on, we'll use these bricks on this other project, or something as simple as, in some instances, you can use a brick that's over 20 Newton in kilonewton in terms of, and you can use that in certain circumstances rather than the brick that people are currently using. So it could be that you check the bricks, and if they're over that, well, they can be used in certain circumstances for certain developers in certain elements. And I think there's also the fact that you can look at it even in terms of, if you can take down X number of bricks on a building, look at how, let's say it's an office building, a commercial building, or whatever. Well, look at the foyers, look at the reception areas, look at how you can maximise the use of the bricks there. And I think there's a massive demand for people wanting to do it. There is an economic cost to it, which sometimes is prohibitive depending on the brick. There is an element that it could slow things down if it's a really quick turnaround. There could be, so these are all things we've seen, obviously, in conversations. And there is that element as well, and we've seen this very recently, where an architect really, really wanted it. It was a massive part, and the contractor, which is not a contractor we generally work for or have ever worked for, really doesn't want to do it, because they haven't spent enough time having that conversation to see it won't slow down the project, it won't do anything else. And I think it's been a big learning curve. I mean, you look at what they do in Montreal, and you have to reuse bricks because they don't make bricks in Canada, so you have to buy from the States. Trump puts tariffs on bricks. They get very, very expensive. They're very expensive anyway, coming that distance. So if you can reuse what you've got there, then it makes perfect sense.
it's sustainability for the long term, isn't it? To reuse and use less waste, and that's where I think there's that exciting opportunity for all of our businesses to become more circular in that respect. So for us, it's certainly something that we're going to be focusing on in the future. But what advice would you ask from manufacturers, from the likes of ourselves, even if it's just from an education point of view for the wider community? Do we encourage people to use more lime mortars than cement-based mortars so that it's easier to reuse, or is there other things that we can do to encourage this?
I think that's that. I mean, lime mortar is obviously easier to take down, but it's not. We've done projects where it's been full cement mortar. We've taken the cement off and we've relaid the bricks. It's not a killer. As I said, lime mortar is probably better if you are selling the bricks on. If the bricks are being used on the same site, it's slightly different. I think it's an education piece on the longevity of bricks. Yes. Something we're finding massively is, we have used, and everyone, the whole market has used reclaimed bricks forever, London stock or something like that, and it's been reused forever. Now, nobody's tested those bricks. I've never seen, we need to test those bricks. Now we're talking about using bricks. People are saying, well, what's the testing that's being done? Well, why for 200-300 years have we used a brick without testing it? Or if you go into central London, and we're London centric, so I can only really talk about London. Why, when you go into central London, you look at an old project somewhere like Shepherd's Market or somewhere like that, where the bricks are X number 100 years old, and you look into the wall build-up, it's not one manufacturer that's been used there, it's whatever bricks they found to put in those walls. So obviously we have to have a focus on safety, we have to have a focus on the structural ability of buildings, but there might be a bit of too much of a focus on proving a product that's currently been standing for 100 years or 50 years. This is the big thing now. Buildings have actually quite a short life span now. So you are seeing projects coming down that are 40, 50 years old. So the bricks actually aren't that old, I think the education piece is by the manufacturers to say, look, our bricks for X number of years have been made in this way. We're confident, whether they've been on a building or not, that they will last for X number of years without any issues. And it's a little bit, we over check things now, and people use products for years and years, and bricks especially. It's fire rated. It makes perfect sense in that regard. And why all of a sudden you need to put it through the mill in terms of checking how it does what it's always done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. We had a campaign quite a few years ago now called the Think Longer campaign, which was about kind of trying to encourage people to design buildings to last for 200 years, not 20, and to say, true sustainability is the longevity of our built environment. And so it's sad in my eyes to see that buildings, in your perspective, are 50, 60, 40 years old, and it's worrying as well. I mean, I know you and I have had many discussions about EPDs and things, and actually contradictory to what we were saying just now about having figures on testing is having accurate information on EPDs is actually something that people are crying out for, and it's really difficult to achieve because too many people are using different types of factors and parameters to get their figures over, and it's just complicated for people to understand. Something that we're focusing on as a business, and we've got some really exciting projects about to kick off, is to really focus on data and optimization of our factories and the efficiency of the factories, bringing that natural gas down that we're using, again, which will bring that embodied carbon down. But it's a challenge that we're seeing across the sector, is this trying to get that message across. Like you said, it's the life cycle analysis of the buildings being properly calculated so people can really understand that reusing a product like brick, which has 150 years according to the Brick Development Association, but we know it lasts a lot longer than that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's true sustainability, really, using a product that has a long life so that we're not redoing things again and again and again. But I agree with you, when there is the opportunity to reuse and recycle, we should absolutely be doing that too. So it's a
not
challenge.
it's not a negative for brick manufacturers. That's brilliant. The Michelmersh process on this, and I've heard it from others. It's not a negative, because the reality is that the more the brick is used, it actually develops another market. And as brick becomes more sustainable in its construction, in its production and its manufacturing, well, then it makes more and more sense. And I think that's a big one. And I think it's manufacturers who are thinking outside that box of, right, we have to sell our product. We can focus on a particular market that we don't think is ever going to change, because it'll always want bricks. But actually, things are always changing. We know that. We know the market changes. We know what people look at, and that's actually making sure that people understand that with brick, they have a product, whether it's up 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years, is very easy to take down and reuse.
Do you think the introduction of the digital product passports is going to make a big difference and make people focus on kind of the quality of each of the individual materials at the point that they are taking buildings down, and then want to look at more reuse?
I think you'd like to think that. I think you would, but I think you've got to look at the planning involved, and you've got to look at everyone being involved in that. And also, how many projects have gone to brick, and it then goes to precast. Now, it's very, very difficult to reuse bricks after they've been in precast. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you'll have the element as we can do it faster using precast. I still disagree with that, because it takes months and months of planning in advance, while when you're building with brickwork, with bricklayers, they can change the day before they get to that area. They can change that day, what it's going to look like. With precast, you can't. And then reality is if you're taking it down afterwards in precast, and potentially, unless you've got a building that looks the exact same and wants to stick the same precast panels up, it's going to be very, very difficult to reuse them. And I don't know enough about how they can be used with precast, but from a common sense point of view, I can't see it. So I think you could have that, but I think there'll be always someone looking to find a better way, as in their opinion, a better way. As an industry, we almost give ourselves a kicking all the time, because we go on about skill shortages and elements like that. Now, if somebody could show me an industry in the Western world now, that doesn't have the skills issue of people coming through, then I'd be amazed. You see it everywhere. It's if I give a small example, my brother lives in the States, and there was just a Starbucks opening up down the road from his house, and it had to open 2 months late because they couldn't get staff. There was not people coming through, and I think, especially in brickwork, I think we've made huge strides. I think there's businesses that have always done it in terms of bringing through apprentices. I think there's businesses who are new to that journey. I think there are businesses that are definitely not doing enough. It's very difficult. All of us would always like to do more, but the reality is it's all based on workload and what you've got ahead, and how many people you can keep, and how many people you can manage, and how many people you can look after. And the minute that keeps on being said about skill shortages, and construction talks about it more than any other industry when they don't need to. Economically, we've got a healthcare shortage, we've got, and we talk about it more and more, people will start going, well, I need to find another way, so let's do it in precast, which in turn, 40 years' time, or not precast, maybe rain screen cladding, or glass and steel, or whatever, but then in 40, 50 years' time, when that building is coming down, now we've got an issue. Now, steel is obviously quite interesting, because that's being used, recycled more and more. You're seeing bigger projects in London, especially being done, which is great, obviously. But brick is still like the kind of poor relation in terms of actually people seeing the ability and the requirements. And this is what I was kind of saying earlier about the economic element of it. If I want to buy a cheap red brick, I can buy a cheap red new brick. If I'm taking cheap red brick off a building, nobody's going to want to pay for it because it's going to be a lot more money than a cheap red new brick, you know. So it's a difficult one, and that's why it has to be looked at when it comes to potentially certain buildings and certain projects and certain bricks that they're using, that it has to be just a sustainability decision rather than an economic one, which is always going to be difficult because economic reasons are the reasons we allow projects to be built and push them forward, because at the end of the day, you know, we got to proceed with that. So yeah, I think I mean I'd like to see it is the honest answer. I'd like to see more and more. I'd like to see the fact that, you know, as the brick manufacturers get their EPDs, as there's changes made, as things happen, when Sarah finally gets her hydrogen, and you know, you can start seeing, you know, big differences, that actually it makes more and more sense. And you know, there are bricks in the market now which are ticking a huge amount of boxes, you know, and there will be a lot more, and there'll be you know, there's and I'm, you know, there's lots of bricks then that I think as well are not ticking boxes. I think, you know, they're saying stuff, but actually when you look into them, they might need more steel behind them, they might need this, they might need that. But I think the big one for me is that you are seeing brick manufacturers change, and you'll always have the people who knock it, you'll always have the people who have ulterior motives, you'll always have the people who it doesn't matter what, and you also always have the people that lie because they've got another product that they want to support or whatever else. So it really does. Sorry.
That's where it's got to come back down to integrity, doesn't it? That's something that, like, for us, like, we've got company core values, which are IRIS, integrity, respect, innovation, and sustainability, and it's got to have that integrity piece. And that's where you and I, we've spoken so many times in the past about, you know, we see the value in delivering you the product that you know and love, that you have worked with for decades, but lower carbon, and giving you exactly that same product that you're expecting, with the same durability, same longevity, same compressive strength, etc., if not better, if we can, but delivering that at lower carbon. And you know, I can give that assurance that we are working very hard in the background at delivering that as soon as we possibly can, and there's some really exciting projects on the time horizon. But I absolutely believe in shaping genuine sustainability, and I'm not going to greenwash anything that we are doing. So absolutely, it's got to be delivered in a conscious way, that is a way that we can deliver it at a commercial scale. And so we were excited, we did the hybrid trials, etc. But for us, you know, we're eager to go into that next stage now of actually delivering that. And we are looking at some really exciting ways of delivering that sooner. But it's not easy. It takes a huge amount of investment. It takes a long time with planning and everything else that we're looking at doing. And it's about bringing people on the journey, because like you said, it's not easy to sell a reclaimed brick, and we know that there are circumstances where there's the odd architect with the odd project where they'll happily pay £2 a brick, but this is few and far between. And so we've got to kind of gradually move the market forwards towards positive change. It's just not something that's going to change overnight.
But Saz, you're 100% right. These bricks behind me are about £1.60 a brick.
Yeah.
You know, so actually, you know, they are like a nice brick, but to use that kind of, you know, focus. But again, I think that could be very London centric in many issues and many things, because there tends to be more money spent on the facades in London. I think that's moving. I think that's shifting. I think I'm seeing that even from Brick Awards judging. It's, you know, you're seeing up the country things changing, you know, and it's something that's noticeable, very much noticeable, that there's a shift in finances in terms of the developments that are happening. So you are hopefully seeing an element of, you know, slightly more expensive bricks. the big deal is on a £200 million project, or whatever the cost is to build the project, buying a 50p brick or a £2 brick is not going to, it's not a massive difference based on how big the facade is. And, you look at savings on that and you kind of say, the savings are negligible, from going from a £2 brick to a £1 brick. Yes, it's 50% on the material element, but over the full course of the project, it's negligible. And then you look at the fact that it's the fire ratings, fireproof, etc., etc. And I think that's the other big thing. I think it's the sustainable products that are coming out have to be as good, if not better, than the products they're replacing. And I think we're seeing that a bit now, where there's huge fanfare on certain more sustainable products. And then you look at it and you say, hold on a second, it's not ticking all the boxes that we need it to tick.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about politics, but in terms of, where we currently sit in worldwide Western politics, it's people they want change, but they don't want to change from what they expect or what their expectations are. And I see that as a way of looking at our facades, and this is why brick should be, if you walk through London, yes, there's obviously the city, etc., where there's with beautiful brick buildings, and then there's the stained glass buildings, and they have a place as well, of course, but people know brick, they understand brick, they've grown up around brick. It's something that, their house was probably built in brick, or, the supermarket they went to had probably brick on the outside, and it's what people understand. And if you can turn around and say, right, we're not changing the culture, the landscape of London as it currently sits, as the current generation. And I've had this conversation with somebody before we started talking about, London before the Great Fire of London being, nobody remembers it. We don't have to change from brick because of the Great Fire of London now. And the reality is that it's what people understand. And if you can build the same buildings that we've been building, but better for the environment, then it's only a positive thing. And you're 100% right about greenwashing or green lies, because that's what a lot of it is. And, again, we've spoken a million times on this, is my personal hate is somebody says it's 50% less. 50% less than what? You know what I mean? We've got a brick, it's 50%. Show me what product it's 50% less to, and then it's 50% less. But if you're just making that wild statement, and then and actually when you get your figures out, which is what we've done, we've got carbon calculators and everything that we've designed as a business, if you can then have a look at that and say, well, hold on a second, you're not 50%, you're 30%. You're 30%, that's brilliant. 30% less is brilliant. But why have you said it's 50%? Why have you based it on something of you can't prove? And it's amazing when you get into conversations on things like that. And we've got more sustainable practices, I think, on every project we've currently got on and every project we've currently got starting. And you hear the stories of, we've been offered another product and it's less embodied carbon. And it's not. We've done the calculations. It's not less embodied carbon. It's actually more than what you had specified in the first place. And I think there has to be some, as you said earlier, transparency. And that's the big one. If a manufacturer launches a product and they say it's 50% less, don't just say it's 50%. It's 50% against brick, traditional brickwork. Well, it's not, because one of your factories will produce bricks at X, and another factory, because it's older and newer or whatever, will be slightly different. So this brick is similar to our other brick, which is made in such a factory, and that is 50% less based on what you see on that factory. And again, what's a 50% less on A1 to A3? But if the factory is in northern Scotland and is coming down to London, and the other factory is in Surrey, well, there's an issue there because you're transporting it, so you're A4. So I do think A1 to A4 has to be looked at now when you're looking at the start of a project. And I think, longevity of brick will always be a winner over many other materials. And then it's trying to understand that actually that longevity should still last. Now, with circular brick, there is still carbon involved in cleaning bricks. No matter way you look at it, whether it be human, whether it be machines, whether it be whatever, or transport off-site and on-site. So it's not carbon negative. until we do an EPD showing what that can happen, and that's quite difficult to do. But what it is obviously substantially less. The products would have come off the building anyway, being thrown in the skip if a building is being taken down. If you can reuse them, obviously there's an element, but it's I think you said the right word a while ago, transparency. That's exactly what it is. And if you can't stand by something and say that's what we've done, or that's why we're doing it, or this is why we've made the claim we've made, then you can't trust the business, and one little, and we all make mistakes. I'm not saying people make mistakes, but one little thing like that can have massive effects on future working of a business. And we've helped. I'd like to think we've helped. We've definitely sat down with people and discussed with them on their carbon journey, and it was probably that word, probably said in a huge amount of different ways, was the transparency. Just make sure that whatever you're launching, you can't be cut out.
Yeah.
Because if you can prove that somebody else is lying or messing with the truth slightly, and you're not, you can say, look, it's the same as ours. It's not lower than ours. It's the same compound carbon, but actually ours does this, ours does that, ours does the other. And this is what our standard material did, and this does actually a little bit better because it's not just more sustainable, but also it's got a better fire rating, or it's got more recycled content, or and I think that's a big part of it. I definitely think. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, you made a really good point earlier as well about skills and training. And we've had a couple of podcasts already where they have indeed given the kind of more negative side to where they feel the sector is. And so, I'd love for this to be a great opportunity to see the other view, to talk about that other view a little bit more, and shine a light on the really good things that you've been doing specifically as a company. Can you tell us a bit about, obviously you've been in the Houses of Parliament lately, and you've been given a special award, haven't you? Can you tell us about the Apprenticeship Employer Award that you've
I thought, to be honest, I thought I was getting my peerage. I thought it was about time. It wasn't. So no, that's just it's the top 50 SME apprentice employers in the country by the Department of Education, and we've appeared on that top 50 list for 3 years now. What was quite exciting is last year, I think there was 4 brickwork contractors on it. So, there was about 5 construction companies before were brickwork contractors. This year it was only us on that list. Now, and that's because we fit into an SME and etc. But you only get out of something what you put into something, and it's the same with sustainability. And the reality is we don't have 1 million apprentices. We've got a solid base every year and coming through. And this year, I think for the entire industry, work wasn't at the same level it's been for the last few years. So our numbers are slightly down. But we have guys currently going, in terms of bricklayers apprentices, we've got guys in their level 3, we've got guys in their level 2, and we have some more starting in January. We set up our scheme, Mentor Me. It was called, I can't remember how many years ago now. It wasn't that many years ago. It was 4 or 5 years ago. And prior to that, we still have people within the business who started their apprenticeships in 84 and 85, and are still with the business. So have obviously worked up in that period. And looking at our project managers, out of our project managers, only one wasn't an apprentice with us, but he's been with us 25 years as well. So, so it's always been done in terms of the business is always focused on apprentices and bringing them through and whatever else. It was always a focus on building it up for our own needs. We have a very low labour churn. People tend to be loyal to us, we're loyal to them, etc. So what we did a few years ago is we just kind of said, right, well, we need to do more. The failure rate, or the people leaving apprenticeships, is a huge number. There's very few people, I can't remember the exact percentages, but it's very low in terms of the people who complete their apprenticeships in construction. So we kind of looked at that and we said, right, so before we set up Mentor Me, we had a year of let's try this and let's try that and see how we can make little changes. And April, who's our health and safety manager, she kind of became our apprentice liaison. So me sending pictures of her as pictures of a hen with loads of little chicks around it to her, I think she thought was hilarious. But it was to give that element of where actually, your project managers, your site managers, they've got very busy jobs, in terms of building these projects, and they've been apprentices themselves, and they want to help the apprentices. And it was kind of they'll help with the construction element. What about if the apprentice needs some advice or needs some tips, or so let's put somebody in there. So April did that, health and safety, mental health first aider, etc. So she was well equipped in terms of qualification wise, and then so it was kind of small things like setting up WhatsApp groups for every year, which I'm on as well, on all of them. And it was trying to then put in a apprenticeship charter, which was us as a business, the manager / mentor of the apprentice, and the apprentice themselves. And it's non-contractual, but we all signed it, and that's what we promised to do. This is what the manager or the mentor promises to do, and this is what you promise to do as an apprentice. And if we're all doing all of those things, then it'll be a success. Now, if we're not doing something on that, tell us. If you're not doing something on that, we'll tell you. And if the mentor's not doing something, we'll tell them as well. So that's how it kind of first developed. And then we had a conversation with a guy called John Duffin from Keyfix, who are a manufacturer we use for fireproof cavity trays. And we were talking just about in general about apprentices and the difficulties and whatever, and he kind of said, look, we'd love to help. I explained what I saw, or what we saw as the way of trying to motivate to achieve 100% completion, and it was great. It was kind of, we could see the same thing. So they agreed to sponsor, and by sponsoring, what they did is they provided the tools, the clothing for the people, but also they provided opportunities for CPDs. They also provided the opportunity for everyone to go to the factory, which bricklayers don't really see how their bricks are made. They don't see how their shelf angle is made. They don't see how their wall ties are made. They don't see, and they just they're on site and have these delivered. And we thought, well, let's get the apprentices, the bricklaying apprentices, the opportunity to see how this is done. And so we kind of developed it from there. And it's been working really well. There's much more of an interview process in place now, in terms of trying to ensure that the people who are starting really know what they want, because not just for us, but for the individual. If you start in college and doing your apprenticeship and you start with us, and in 2 months, 3 months time you decide, I don't really want to do this, it's not what I thought it was, etc., you're then in limbo. Because you leave the course, there's no other college courses starting. Yep. You're stuck there, and that's a side effect of somebody not completing their apprenticeship. It's not because they were bad, it's because they don't want to do it, or whatever it might be. So try to pick the right people earlier, and then give them every bit of help you can as part of that. And we then we extended Mentor Me into administration apprentices, and she was one. We had one administration apprentice, and she's completed. Got at the start, we knew she'd passed the course, but she did really well. She got distinctions, and surprising but not surprising. I'm gutted we've lost her, but she's made the decision to go on to university and do business administration, which she had no plans of a year and a half ago. So from a personal point of view, fantastic, brilliant, delighted for her. From a business point of view, god damn it. But it was trying to free up. But and now we've got
It's
three.
quite praise to you though that
Yeah,
it's shown her how much she wants to do it and wants to
yeah,
educate
and
further.
fair play to her, and I think she'll do really well. And talk about individuals. We see massive changes in the people that work with us on apprenticeships over that first year. There's natural growth because generally they tend to be younger anyway, but also if you give them the right tools and ability. So we've now got 3 QS apprentices under Mentor Me as well. They have the same idea. They have a mentor. Everyone has a mentor. They have a mentor who works with them, who helps them. They're not a boss. They're a more senior member of staff. They're not a boss, so they don't fire them. They don't, tell them off if they've done something wrong. There's nothing like that. They are there to help them, and not just help them in terms of their work, but help them if they can with anything else. So I think it's just trying to make that element of that you're supported more than anything else. So it's worked really well. I never think we're doing enough, is the honest answer, but that's what, unfortunately, I'm quite negative and things like that, so I don't think we're ever doing enough with anything. But it's great to see people coming through and people being so happy. And one of the things with the apprentice rankings was the apprentices had to write a review on Rate My Apprentice, which I think is called Higher In now. And we didn't get all 100%, they're the best ever, they're the greatest, we love Lines in the News, they're fantastic. We actually got some that were still good, but kind of saying, I found we didn't do this, or I found we didn't do that. And, I think straight away when we read some of the reviews that were online, it made us think as well, okay, we've got to do a little bit more of that, and we've got to do a little bit, we've neglected doing a factory visit for a year and a half now. Okay, well, we need to get one in, and we've spoken about it before. Come to Michelmersh, and we're going to go to see the flooring plant, and our another thing. So we've got to push that. We've got to push that again.
That will play a part of why you did get in the top 50, though. That you're listening, you're getting the feedback, but you're listening to it and you're making changes and improving the apprenticeship.
Yeah, I think we've got. The other exciting bit is with Mentor Me. We obviously wrote down our business plan for Mentor Me, and whatever it's business plan, it's 2 sheets of A4 paper, and 2 other contractors asked for it, which they were given, and then they have set up theirs using elements of Mentor Me, which is great, and it's fantastic, and they're not direct competitors, so it's not an issue. But again, I wouldn't give a damn if it was a direct competitor, because we all have something to bring people into our industry, and this is probably where I'm not negative on training. I'm not negative because the reality is, if you're negative, what are you doing? What are you doing about making that change? Now, we can't do everything, and I would never claim that I could do anything on it, besides moan about why people aren't doing enough. But the reality is that the onus falls on all of us. I think the onus falls on government too. I think the government should be saying, hold on a second, if it's a government-led project or potentially planning, not just an S106 of you have to take an apprentice on for the 6 months that you're on this site. No, we want to see the completion of your apprenticeships, and I'm seeing a bit of that now, but we want to see the completion of your apprenticeship. We want to see the history of you training people in the industry, and if you haven't got apprentices, then you're not on the tender. Simple as. And I think that's a big one. I think there's lots of people come up with great ideas. I think there's lots of people come up with rubbish ideas as well about how to make changes. And I think it's probably people realising that look beyond the PR and look beyond the it's a bit like sustainability. If you look beyond that and you kind of decide, see what works best for you as a business. But I do still believe contractors need to sit down and as a group and actually talk. You never reach consensus, because I've always found this, when you talk in a group, there'll always be somebody who's moaning about, generally me, moaning about everything else, moaning about the colleges and moaning about And they don't look beyond. And it amazes me as well. You sometimes read like posts that people have done on LinkedIn and stuff, and when they talk about an apprenticeship, and you're going, none of that is true. What you've written, you've just really shown that you don't understand what your apprentices are doing. You don't understand the processes they're going through. And we try to understand. We don't know everything, and always will say that, and I always say we should be doing better. Again, it's a relatively quiet year this year, so the numbers are down. But as we're picking up ahead, they'll pick up as well. And it's
I
just
don't, I don't think you're giving yourself enough justice there, Dave. I think you are doing your negative Nelly, because I think you have done an incredible amount for apprenticeships. And that self-reflection piece that you spoke about before, where them doing those types of feedback loops into the company is really important. I mean, only today I shared with our CEO that we did an internal survey on our materiality for our ESG, and 48 people within the company took place in that survey, and 75% of them said that they thought we were strong performers in ESG, and that's coming from the employees. So that makes me incredibly proud and gives us great ideas and feedback for the things where they think we're lacking as well, and like great opportunity to embrace that and take that forward. And that sounds like it's the same that what you're doing there with taking the students' feedback on board, or the apprenticeships feedback, and that's all we can do is try to keep incrementally improving with every day.
And you can't take, and as you know, you can't take all feedback, because some feedback you can't make that change, or you can't do that, or it wouldn't make sense long term with how you're doing things. It has to be a justified change that benefits the apprentice. It has to benefit the business as well, because that's important. And I think it's great to see how we've got. We're not trying to change how our apprentices are trained. No. I mean, the QS ones are all doing QS apprenticeships based on brickwork and blockwork. So we focus that. But the bricklaying apprentices, the training levels that are out there, depending on the college you're using, because that is fluctuating, is good. It'll pass them on their tests. It'll pass them on. Now, what we're doing slightly different is we're giving them that extra. What we've often had is, we had bricks from yourselves come in as part of the pledge, and we have had materials come in from lots of our suppliers, and we've had new materials come in. So we've had more sustainable materials come in, and the apprentices have had first play on them.
Fantastic, yeah.
So they can then give feedback from a very honest, basic kind of point, which is always quite interesting. But also, the tutors in the college we use also are really happy to give feedback. So that's always good as well when they see these different products and how it helps them. So yeah, I think that's the only thing we've really looked at focusing on changing in terms of the training aspect, giving people more evidence. I think my only negative on what we're seeing in the industry is, because of the negativity around people not being trained enough, is people trying to train people faster. Now, training people faster will not produce better tradespeople. It'll produce people who can do an element of work quicker. But over your long-term career as that trade, are you going to know everything? No. And I think you've got to maximise. One thing we have done is an apprenticeship for a bricklaying can take between, I'm trying to think, it's 18 months and 2 years, or it's 14 months and 2 years, something like that. We take the full 2 years because we can do more with them, and you're a long time qualified, so if they can maximise what they can learn in that period of time, then I think that's personally better. So we never put any pressure on the college that we want people endpoint assessed quicker than what they are being done. It's literally on the basis of when we think they'll come in with the knowledge, not the fact that they could do 1 million bricks a day or something like that in a straight line, because that's not going to benefit them 5 years time.
I think you're absolutely right. That's a great takeaway, isn't it? That, really, if you want quality, it's going to take time. It's going to take that investment of people's time and resources into delivering that, both from the manufacturer's side when we're talking about products, and from your side about having the craftsmen and the skills of the next generation. So it's been a fantastic conversation, Dave. I've really enjoyed it. Emily Herbert, from the marketing manager of Michelmersh, Dave Mills, who's the director of business development at Lions and Anouk, really want to thank you today for your time, and would really encourage anyone who's listening today to also have a look at the rest of the Forming the Future podcast series by Michelmersh, and hopefully we can carry the conversation on. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Emily.